What's up, everybody? Hello. Welcome to the Hustling Sideways podcast.
Oh, that's this one?
That's what
I'm
this
in the
one
wrong
is.
podcast. Sorry, guys.
Oh, no. Jim,
Just
no,
kidding. This is the one. This
Yes.
is the one.
I'm Alan Halas. I'm a music writer.
And I'm Jim Love, and I'm a keto motivational speaker, and I am in the right place.
You are in the
This
right
is
place.
where I parked my car.
Your name's it was on the graphic that just played.
I forgot about the graphic.
Yeah. So,
good point.
in addition to our regular podcast that we do, where we have all sorts of great guests from all over the place talking about their side hustles, their passion projects, things like that. We also go through and we talk about things that, people with businesses and entrepreneurs, what they go through.
That we all deal with, that we all learn from, and,
Yes.
and also make mistakes on, and just things generally that Alan and I, throughout our careers and our side hustle, passion,
Stuff we learned along
journeys,
the way.
I'll call it, that we've caught on to. So if you're here for the first time, wonderful. If you're here for maybe the 40-something time, also wonderful. We're glad to have you.
Well, yes, we're definitely glad to have you.
Well,
And
yes. Let's talk about what we want to talk about today, which was a really weird way to transition into the topic.
I'm glad you didn't think much about it because that's what we're doing. Today we are talking about not overthinking. Just
And
not
also
thinking.
just generally not thinking. Yeah.
No, today
Which
we're
is what
talking-
Alan just did.
Today we're talking
Yeah.
about not overthinking.
Not overthinking.
things.
Correct.
This is something that conveniently we actually just put out a YouTube short about this today.
We did. So
And
if you're
I
if you're
didn't-
listening,
I
yes.
didn't even think about that, but
Yeah.
we did. I think that it is very important to not overthink something because you can get lost in your own head, really.
This happens to me, I would say literally all the time. And it's something I combat constantly.
It's like a look before you leap kind of thing.
Very much so.
But if
And-
you look too much, you're going to get freaked out and not leap.
There's a really short phrase that I'll use for this because oftentimes when you overthink, you doubt, right? Like that's typically you're your own worst enemy. We all are.
Sure.
And as you start doubting. So I have a shirt that says this too. It's start doing, stop doubting. Like
Okay.
that's it. Just do it, right? I mean, obviously
Just
Nike
do
says that, and I made that up on the spot. But just generally, especially if you're passionate about something, you have a thing that you enjoy doing, then do it. Like you don't
Yeah.
need permission. You're all adults, and I don't care how old you are listening to this. You can go out and do your thing and stop doubting yourself. The minute you doubt yourself is the minute all that insecurity will creep in. You'll have like, oh, do I really want to do it? Like that's how people get started. Is they do it. They start the thing and they move forward, and you make mistakes and you learn from them.
Absolutely.
But I actually just read a book, a really good book called Broken Soundtracks, and well, maybe it's just called Soundtracks. Either way, it's a really good book. I don't remember what it's called.
Google
apparently.
it. It's
But
out there.
By John Acuff about how to stop overthinking. And so the basis of it is that we all have broken soundtracks in our head. Like I'm not good enough. I can't do this. I can't do that. That just kind of play on a loop. And it's to recognize those, decide if they're truthful, if they're kind, right? And if they're helpful. And if they're not any of those three things, to replace them with positive soundtracks.
Okay.
And it's difficult because we do these all the time, but it's something I've focused on to get positive soundtracks in my head to then help me get past that level of overthinking. Because overthinking right away leads to the brokenness of
Right.
like, maybe I'm overthink this. Oh, of course I can't do this. No way. And then I kind of sink right back into it. But if you're passionate about that thing, break that broken soundtrack, if you will.
Yeah.
Decline it and put in a positive soundtrack that's the opposite of what you were thinking before and stick to it. Give yourself reminders. So it's a really, really good book. I read it maybe a month ago, and just something that really spoke to me because overthinking is a problem I have and has kept me from doing things that I typically would go for because I second guess it. And it's like, follow your gut. Your intuition's what got you here. Anyway, that was a lot of verbal diarrhea. I'll hand it right over to Alan.
It's no, you're right though. It's it's the hurdle that is the hardest part.
No doubt.
It's not going up the hill. It's the little bump on top of the hill and getting over that. That is kind of the hardest part, is to just go. And so I very much get that voice too, like you do, where you're like, I can't do this. I shouldn't because X, Y, Z. And then the longer that you go, the more it like snowballs.
Totally.
And you're eventually like, I can't do this because I have this multitude of reasons, when it's something really simple.
You could come up with 100 reasons why you can't do
It
something.
could easily be something where you're just like, well, if I just did it and tried it, like that's the phase that I am in now. Is there's a lot of just trying stuff, and some stuff isn't going to work out. Like I know already that it's not for lack of trying though, which is the important part. You got to try stuff. You like my other thing, and I think that's probably originally why we brought this up in our group text.
Yeah,
about what should we talk about?
Yeah. It's a great group text, by the way.
It is.
Alan and I just being like, what did we talk about on the next pod? That's
Exactly. I think the reason that I brought this up initially, though, is because there are so many people out there that are making content about you can do it, you can do this, you just have to try. And I think people watch enough of that stuff, including us, but you should keep watching us.
Yes.
Please keep watching us.
Stay here. Don't worry about them.
But I think if you watch enough of that stuff without ever putting it into action, then all of a sudden, you're caught in the snowball. You're
Totally.
caught into that thought of, well, those guys are doing it, but I can't do it. And then you sit there and you watch and you're like, I have this mindset. I have this readiness. I'm ready to go. But if you don't take that initial push and you don't make that initial thing happen, you're just sitting there watching stuff that's telling you what to do when you're not doing it.
Well, and it's funny because you're almost thinking, and this is the experience I've had before, when someone's giving you that talk or, giving you the advice to go, you're like, well, he's doing it. So like, I'm fine. It's like a funny thing of, I would love to be that guy. Like that sounds great. But then you end the session or end whatever seminar you're in, and you're like, now it's back to reality. And oftentimes when I speak to students or whoever it is, whatever age it is, I'm like, I give all these messages, and I'm like, by the way, if you leave here today and you're like, I was at a seminar at a school. I saw a speaker who, was kind of weird, and that's me, by the way. And then you go back home and you're like, well, back to reality. It's like you blew it. That's not why you're here. If you think that's why you're here, you're wrong. Like, particularly when I'm part of a larger program, when there's other speakers or like other activities going on, I'm like, you're here to actually learn something and put one thing into action, not the entirety of the day. Like, pick one thing, and that's it. Because we get. The overwhelmed part and the overthinking part is when you get too much and you're like, I can't do 8 things. Well, of course not. Like, most people can't do 8 things. But you can start with one of them that speaks to you the most and try it. And if it doesn't go well, pick a different one. You know what I mean? Like, you're just back at square one. So there's never a reason to not do a thing. There's always a reason to, like, pick one that just speaks to you. The one that speaks to you authentically is the one you should always go with.
Yeah.
But oftentimes you'll get a lot of messages and it's like, roll with one, try it. And again, there's no pressure. You don't have to check in with anyone. If it doesn't go well, but don't let yourself bake in sort of this aura of like, oh, I don't know. Like,
maybe I should,
doubting it. Just try it. Try it and see what happens. Because the worst thing that happens is you're back to where you started.
So Jim, I know you don't skateboard.
Yes.
I grew up skateboarding. And so there's a lot of trying and failing in skateboarding. And maybe we do a whole separate video about that sometime. But
that'd be a good outtake. Yeah.
When you drop into a ramp and you stand on your back tail and you lean forward, you have to lean forward and physically go down this thing. And it's a curved ramp and you're probably going to fall the first time you do it.
Yeah.
And you have to commit to it though. And so I think of this business sense sometimes and that mindset of just going for it. It's like dropping in on a skateboard.
No doubt.
If you don't commit to it and you don't put your weight into it and your first foot forward, you're going to fall back on yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're going to get real hurt. So, I mean, I don't know why I'm just thinking about this now, but
it's a good point.
Like that.
And it's really like, don't half-ass it.
If you don't commit,
if you're going to do it,
physically feel it.
Do the thing.
Yeah.
And don't be like, well, dip a toe in. Like, dude, just jump. Like, go for it and do it.
Go for it.
So I think that the moral story is overthinking happens to all of us. Yeah. And find your ways to combat it, whether it's focusing on one thing, whether, it's just generally getting your mindset in a place where you're declining the broken soundtracks and putting in the things of like, I'm going to try this. And the worst thing that happens is you're back to where you started. Exactly. And that's totally fine. And then you come on the podcast to talk about it.
Yeah. And then you have a story. So you get a story out of it.
It's perfect.
If you're listening for the first time, thank you so much. We want you to go out and try something now. So go do that. But also make sure you go and subscribe to our podcast as well. We're wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find Hustling Sideways. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram, Twitter. We're on YouTube and TikTok all the time too. We've got great guests in addition to these helpful little
yes, and the YouTube shorts, sessions. The YouTube reels are awesome. I'm a little biased when I say that, but I think they're awesome.
So we've got plenty of things. So make sure you check in with us there. If you want to be a guest on this podcast too, send us an email, hustlingsideways@gmail.com. We'll see you next week. And Jim?
Keep on hustling.